into racing.
Go
We're
ahead.
big into race and air show motors. I mean, we ship all over the world. The porting process that you guys are calling about, that's how I found out about this place. I'm from here on the West Coast, and I worked for airlines in early life, and I ended up on the East Coast, right? I left a repair station because my boss went to prison for embezzlement, and I went to work at Aviall, the big parts distributor, right? Boeing owns them now. Well, I mean, to be honest, if I would have known white-collar crime got the slap on the hand that it got, I would have been right there with the dude. But anyway, being, kind of God-fearing back then as a youngster, I kind of stayed out of that. I went to work for Aviall anyway, and the first time I sold the Lycoming, I sold the Lycoming engine through the office in Philadelphia. When Lycoming is ready to ship the engine, he asked me to give the guy a call and ask him where it was going to, the address where we get it to the right place the first time. I looked the guy up in the computer. He was like in Maryland or something, so I called him to get his FBO address, and he said he was sending it out to Visalia in California. And I asked him why. I mean, I came from airlines, so, you're not trying to hot rod a turbine engine and get 38 more horsepower out of it. Everything's by the book. And the guy told, I felt sorry for the guy because I thought he broke down here in Visalia of all places. And he said, no, I'm going to send this factory engine out there, and they're going to tear it apart and do all this stuff, and it's going to climb straight up when they're done with it, And I'm like, no, you're full of shit. And the guy goes, how do you know? And I said, I rode the bus past that airport 2 times a day for 12 years. There's nothing there. It's a big airport, but there's not much for services on it. And 7 years later, I ended up out here working for the dude. And I've been here for over 20 years now. The place has been in business for over 40. Reno's not going on anymore. I guess it's moved down to Las Cruces, New Mexico or whatever, or Roswell.
Right.
But all the years with Reno, we were involved with 3 classes, Formula, Sport, and Biplane. And it was always fun for us the week while they were qualifying because we'd look at last year's records during the race, and then, we were shattering the records during qualifying in the pre-week, So, anybody that's making horsepower with an engine is generally going through here in some way, shape, or form.
Wow. Chris?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
I don't know if you guys are or not, though.
Yeah, no, we are. Why? Did something change?
No, I got some things saying that the call is being recorded or something.
Yeah.
I thought I connected. I thought maybe I connected with the IRS or something.
No. We're recording this because we want to post it on our YouTube channel because I know we probably had 30 people sign up for it. We got 17. A lot of people aren't able to make it, so we record it and they can watch it later, listen to it. So
well, we put the I guess that invitation out to anybody that's out here, within a reasonable distance that wants to travel. You guys can stop in anytime. Just drive in or fly into the airport. I'll pick you up at the airport, bring you over, and walk you through the whole shop. That way, you're not just talking about porting, but you can see all the stuff that we do.
Love to do that.
I know like an RG kind of guy or a 182 guy, you're pretty much certified. So you're not doing a bunch of crazy crap, but you could see the stuff that we do. Because we'll knock 40 pounds out of a 540 for a Red Bull engine or an air show guy, right?
Hold on a minute. What do you mean knock 40 pounds out? What does that mean?
We'll lighten the engine by 40 pounds.
By doing what?
Just a lot of machining on it. I've got your email address as soon as I've got a new computer and I can't find anything in it. But tomorrow morning when I get in, I'll search out another one of those magazine articles that you're looking at. Okay. And they'll give you a lot of pictures on things, it shows you how we lighten the pistons and, trim down the piston pins, take about half the weight out of a flywheel on a Lycoming engine. A lot of machining that we do to the cylinders. It's nothing you certified guys can do at all, but
okay.
We make our own line of pistons in FS or Need for Speed. There was only us and Combustion Technologies, and Combustion Technologies on the East Coast went out of business. So we're the only game in town for buying lightweight forged aluminum pistons.
So I'm looking at your air power article that says Lycon is pioneering CNC cylinder head porting for both certified and experimental engines. Tell us specifically what you can do for the 0540 Lycoming that we all are running.
Like your 540s, the 6 cylinders will generally see about 30 horsepower gain in the test cell here. It's not quite a real world number because we're not running it with a vacuum pump or an alternator on it.
Right.
And we're only 300 feet above sea level too. We never move anywhere, but we'll see about a 30 horsepower gain with ported cylinders. The process for that is if they're a used cylinder, we're going to blast the combustion chamber and the exhaust port and make sure there's no cracks first. It's not worth spending your money if there's a crack there, even if we can detect it, but it doesn't go all the way through. We call you and tell you, hey, there's a crack in the spark plug, boss, and there's no weld repair for it, or a crack in the exhaust port. And you're saying, well, can't you do a weld repair? We won't do any welds here. We see a lot of that comes in on used cylinders that have already ran and been weld repaired. The bead where the weld was is perfect, but there's, it got so hot there's 5 little cracks radiating out of that. And if we go ahead and spend your money or charge you for doing the work, at some point you're not going to have compression. You're going to be mad at us. So if we find cracks there, we won't do any work. But as long as there's no cracks, we'll go ahead and do the work. And whether it be an already run cylinder or brand new, we have to completely disassemble them. We'll take them down to the guides. That's what centers them up in the CNC. If you're looking at the pictures in that magazine article.
Okay, let me scroll down a minute. Hold on a minute. And I have other questions for you while you're saying. So with regard to, we can now see the cylinder machine. Now we're looking at the ports, but you said a couple of things there. If a cylinder shows up with a weld repair, you will not touch it, you said?
Yeah, we'll just call you and tell you we don't want to work on it. So at that point, if it's a used cylinder, we can either replace it with a new one, or we could possibly have, something we can do an overhaul exchange with, a standard bore, at least a cylinder that matches with every standard bore or P10 that's not cracked. We can just sub that in if it's a set that's already ran.
Okay, let's say it's not cracked, but it's pitted. Mike Pattison sends you these cylinders that are like crapped out from being in a corrosive environment.
If the bores are rusty and pitted, usually we can go oversized like P10. If we can't salvage them that way, we can send them out and have them plated. They just put a Sermonil plating in them, which is just a nickel plating. That'll bring them back to standard bore, and you can keep on going from there. You don't want to do it necessarily because it's super expensive. 20 years ago, we used to send them.
What about the cost? What about the cost exactly?
Yeah. 20 years ago, we used to send them to ECI, and it cost like $75 a barrel. Right. Continental bought ECI because they wanted access to Lycoming parts. They wanted to make, PMA parts, and have both Continental and Lycoming. Once they bought that, they'd probably rather have you buy new cylinders from them than to have them repaired. So they've got it up to it's about $500 a cylinder now.
Hey,
so,
Scott.
Your set of six is going to be $3,000 for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Chris and Scott. Sorry to interrupt. I kind of wanted to. Sorry, there's an airplane flying over me right now. I wanted to compliment what Scott said. The way I found out about Lycon is through, of course, word of mouth. But I bought my R182 out of Miami about 3 years ago, and when my major concern was corrosion. The airplane, the gentleman who bought the airplane, put a brand new IO 540 K1G5 from Airplans to the STC, flew it for 100 hours, then parked it. And then I acquired the airplane, and I did a pre-buy. I bore scoped the engine, and it's one of those things. A lot of that pitting on the cylinders, it kind of gets rubbed, so it's really hard to make it out with the bore scope. But it appeared the cam didn't have any issues, and so I got the thing home. It was still under annual, and then I started flying it. And I'm really, really, really particular about leaks, and I'm really particular about oil consumption. So I said, what, I'm really going to kind of get to the bottom of this. And I said, well, the engine only has 200 hours on it. Why not just put new cylinders on it, right? So I had my parts guy down here in Long Beach start pricing cylinders, and Tim's Aircraft Engines, they had 6 brand new in a bag K1G5 cylinders, but he wanted like $3,000 for them, right? And Air Power had 6 for 20, I think it was $2,500 per cylinder. So I said, well, I'll just send it to Lycon.
That's a low number, Mike. That's a low number.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Well, it is when you got money, right? Or when you don't have money, or vice versa. But in any case, it was. I talked to some of the guys down here, and they said, "Dude, take your stuff to Lycon. They're the best." And so I sent my stuff up. I had them repairs as needed. They overhauled the cylinders. They ended up going 10 thousandths over, like Chris mentioned. And when I had my cylinders there, Oh, by the way, because it was cheaper, right? So I said, well, I'm trying to save money, and these cylinders are fairly brand new. I was like, why don't I just have them overhauled? So I did. And I think they ended up being, God, I want to say it was $1,600 or $1,800 a cylinder without the port and polish. And I think with it was like out the door taxes and port and polish, it was like about $2,000. But they were brand new. The guides were reamed, everything with new rocker arms. The cylinders were beautiful. I ended up having the port and polish. So I got the port and polish, essentially new cylinders,
They
and
went oversized, right? They were oversized rings.
yep, yep, oversized
Pistons
rings.
also.
Pistons. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yep. And I had them loaded, so I didn't have to build the piston when I got them from them. They were, dude, everything was per the maintenance manual. I didn't have to get ring compressors and measure the end gaps and
That's
do all the
nice.
crap. It's
That's
just,
nice. Yeah.
it's literally prep and place on and torque and fly it. Like it was a total gentleman program. So, dude, if I
Yep.
was, go ahead.
Yeah, they're ready to install when you get them from us. If you buy new cylinders from the factory, I mean, I'm not putting anybody down, and there's probably 10,000 of those cylinders running right now. We're all on this call, around the world somewhere. But remember, that's just a factory assembly line kind of a thing. I mean, the head and the barrel get twisted together, machine installs the guides, and some guy standing on an assembly line, he's going to drop new valves in the guides. He's going to put the springs and the keeper hardware on there. He's going to, install the rings on the pistons and slap those in, and that's your new cylinder kit, right? But they're not as good as they could be. So even a new cylinder, if you send it here or you buy them from us and we port them, we have to disassemble them all the way down to the guides, backing up to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. So our guys are going to measure everything. They're going to measure the valve stems. They're going to measure the spring tension. If guides need to be honed or reamed, we're going to do that to make them right. Even fitting the rings, we're not just going to put new rings on new pistons and slap them in the barrels. Our guys are going to measure every barrel. So they're going to grind and gap and fit the rings for each piston ring combination for that barrel. You're not going to want to move them around, but they're perfect for that barrel. I mean, the cylinder is the best they can get when you get it out of here. Once we send it out, everything's oiled up. They're ready to install when they leave here.
Cool.
It was awesome. So if anyone in our group is on the fence, definitely take advantage. Maybe that might be an option. My biggest thing was trying to find the cylinders, but I've spent so much money on this airplane, and I'm really particular with it. I want to save as much money as I could, which I'm sure everyone wants to too. And so I was like, you know what, screw it, just send us Lycon, have them do it. They're the best. And so it's been worked out for me.
And what was the turnaround time? What was your lead time? Like how long did you have to wait?
I think by the time
a month and a half.
Yeah, I think it was quicker than that. I want to say it was like, I think it was probably right around 4 weeks. Yep, maybe a little under 4 weeks.
For us, keep in mind that we do about 300 engine overhauls a year. Overhauls, IRANs, prop strike inspections. So we're doing all of our own cylinders, but we get tons of cylinders like yours that come in every day too. So 20 years ago, we probably would have turned that set of cylinders in a week or 10 days, but the volume's just increased so much that it's taken us about a month to, 4, 5, 6 weeks to get a set of cylinders turned around.
Right. And I'm sure everyone's big question is probably like, well, the port and polish, is it worth it? Go ahead. I'm sorry. You want to take the floor for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll just give you our part of it.
Yep.
Like I said early on, we build a lot of race and air show stuff, right? I mean, we make high horsepower engines. Like Jeff Lavelle, he comes in here, he's 285 horsepower out of the box from Lycoming, I think. He's 725 horsepower when he leaves here, right? So we know how to make an engine run. We did one for Vicky Benzing a few years ago before COVID or during COVID. Her and Chris Guthrie from CG Aero brought in a Continental 550, which was 350 horse, I think. And they gave us the number of 1,000 horsepower they wanted for Reno. Being typical racers, they didn't give us the whole 12 months to work on it. They bring it, a month before, 6 weeks before. And Ken got them up to over 900 horsepower with Continental 550. I mean, granted, that's a Reno racer. It's not going to be a daily driver. Well, I mean, Jeff does drive his, though. He doesn't firewall it all the time, but it is a daily driver for him. But anyway, we do a lot of the kind of higher-end race and air show stuff. We do law enforcement and ag stuff, banner towers, all that, too. But we, I can't think we've made our name, with the high-end stuff. When we build an engine here, whether it's for Joe Blow with an 0200 or some Red Bull guy that's spending 150 grand. We balance the engine to a tighter tolerance than either one of the factories will do. Balance is kind of a precision thing. The more balanced you can make the machine run, the longer and the better it's going to run, the better it's going to perform. The porting for us is done to balance airflow through the top end. We know we make more horsepower from it, and that is a byproduct of it, but we're just trying to balance the airflow through it. I mean, air's going through the engine. The engine's just a big air pump. Air's going through it from ahead of the air cleaner to the tip of the exhaust pipe, and we're only working with a couple of inches if you've ever looked in the cylinder port. We're trying to get, like in your case, you guys with the 540s, you're trying to get all 6 cylinders to breathe the same. What I always tell people on the phone is, you've got 6 cylinders and 5 of them are young bucks that are ready to go run a marathon, but one's like an old man with COPD. That's as good as the engine's going to run. You can't force him to keep up. He's not going to do any better, so he just holds the whole process up.
Hey, Chris?
So with us, yeah.
Question. So you mentioned a while back that on Lycoming cylinders, there was greater opportunity for efficiencies than there was with Continental cylinders. Why is that?
No, Continental and Lycoming are going to do about the same. It's parallel valve and angle valve.
Okay.
The angle valve cylinders, because of the way they're designed, they already flow better. The parallel valves, we can gain a lot more horsepower out of them just because of their crappier design. I mean, either way, we're going to gain a ton. We're doing it for balance, but we're going to pick up horsepower on either one. But the angle valves already flow better. If you guys are looking at that magazine article, if you can see like the exhaust ports, like the part where the intake and the exhaust port match up, we don't make those holes any bigger. We're not like Chevy hot rodder guys that get in there with a die grinder and just really open it up, because any of the heads already flow too much air anyway. We're just removing the casting imperfections from back in there around the guides and everything. And then we cut the seats and we do a multi-angle valve grind and hand lap the valves in, and there's where the horsepower comes in. But we've balanced the airflow. That's what we're shooting for.
Okay. I for some reason I thought the Lycoming, I was misinformed about the Lycoming design difference. One of the things we hear lately about Lycoming has a new cylinder line that just came on into production last year. Do you have any comments about the quality, or I guess I'm wondering why have Lycoming factory lead times increased so much in the last 6 months?
Well, this isn't official. I mean, nobody's told me from there, but I mean, we've all been around long enough to know that Lycoming's an old factory, right? I mean, it's an old business. It goes back 100 years or better, right? At one time, they made their own cylinders. Over time, like most manufacturing businesses, enterprises in the U.S., they have farmed the work out. So those cylinders, their cylinders were either made in China or they're made in India, one of the two. When COVID happened and they started telling everybody to stay home, like we didn't, they had us still going 6 or 7 days a week. But you guys or some of you guys maybe that didn't have to go to work. Instead of just flying on Saturday morning, you were flying Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe some on Saturday, some on Sunday, right? So you were flying more hours. There were more overhauls, because more engines were hitting TBO. There were more prop strike inspections, more IRANs, all that, right? Lycoming misjudged the whole thing or misread it, I think. They thought, well, hell, everybody's going to stay home. We can't go outside anymore. Nobody's going to fly their airplanes. So this is a good time just to make our own cylinders. We used to at one time, right? And, the powers that be agreed, yeah, sure, yeah, we used to make our own cylinders at one time. But there's nobody alive that works there anymore that remembers them making their cylinders. Even if they have the machinery, it's probably antiquated and outdated, right? So instead of trying to figure out if they could bring cylinders online and make them themselves, but keep whoever had been making them, they cut the contract and told them, hey, we don't need you guys anymore. We're going to make our own cylinders. We're Lycoming, right? And then realized that they couldn't bring it online fast enough to take care of it. I mean, fortunately, Superior existed, and everybody was able to buy and use Superior cylinders for most every application and kind of keep the world going. But that's kind of where we're at with Lycoming today. And I don't know that even if that's true. It just seems, from talking to different people,
Sure.
That seems to be what I pieced together. They were either made in China or India. When COVID first started happening, the first thing we couldn't get was lifters for Lycoming engines. They were all made in India, and then valves and guides. And there were just different parts over time of the engines we couldn't get. Our parts guys are pretty good about scrounging the world looking for things. Like we do a lot of law enforcement engines. We're a Lycoming distributor. for years we've done highway patrol engines and fish and game and local sheriff's departments, and they would use us, but only as a distributor. They wanted a factory rebuilt engine or a factory new engine. When the factory started pushing their lead times out to 2 years, 2.5, 3 years on these things, right? They started going, hey, can you build them for us? So we're doing it. We're building law enforcement engines with the disclaimer, if we can get new cylinders to put them together. Once we open a job, or even before we open a job, our parts guys are scrounging the world. If some guy in South Africa has 2 brand new cylinders, 8130s, and they're still in the box, we'll buy them. A guy in Japan has 1, we'll buy that one. We'll buy 3 in Australia, wherever. There's mismatched sets, because we're going to redo them anyway before we put them on an engine. So our guys are pretty good at scrounging the world, but it was tough times during COVID getting parts, especially for light-coming engines.
So, Chris, if I'm working with my local overhaul shop, and here in the Midwest, it's Poplar Grove. A lot of people use Poplar Grove.
We do a lot with them, yeah.
Okay, that's my question. Do you guys coordinate with like regional shops to do cylinder work? And because they're telling us that like if they're right now, Poplar Grove is backed up 7 months for turnaround for engines. In fact, they've got a whole new building just full of engines they're taking in inventory to overhaul. And they say that of those 7 months, like 3+ months of that is waiting for cylinders.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. If they're doing overhauls back there, crankcases. Before COVID, we could, any of us, there's only 3 case shops in the country. We could send cases out and get them back in 4 or 5 weeks. Now, sometimes it's taking 5 or 6 months to get a crankcase back.
Yeah. People here use
the whole industry.
Do you guys work with Divco?
Yeah,
that's what people do here.
Divco, CSI, and Nixon's. We use all 3 of them.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, as far as working with shops out there, we'll overhaul the engine for you. But if like right now, like if you called in and said, hey, can you do an engine for me? Yeah, 8 months. But I'll also tell you that the last time I talked to the guys at Firewall Forward in Colorado, they told me they're doing engine overhauls in like 5. So I'll recommend, if you're in a big hurry, maybe give those guys a call and see if they can turn the engine a little faster. But then you come back and go, but they don't port the cylinders or they don't do this or that like you guys do, right?
Yeah.
You can have either you send the cylinders to us and we'll do the work on them and send them back to you, or forward them to your shop, or the shop can take them off and send them to us. I think all of the shops work together all around the country. We do a lot of things that a lot of shops don't do. Like we have an STC, your case has been put together with silk thread for over 100 years, right? Because that's the only gasket material they had.
Right.
There's no leather, rubber, plastic, anything in there, right? We have an STC where we throw half the case in our CNC, and we machine a dovetail groove, kind of a V-shaped groove or a triangle shape.
Right.
It's wider at the bottom than it is at the top, and rather than using silk thread, we seal them up with Viton O-ring material.
Oh, that's a plus.
So a lot of shops, I'll send you all these articles.
Please.
That one, no, I still couldn't find it in this computer. I'll send them all to you in the morning, and you could share them with everybody there.
I'll post them for sure.
But a lot of guys, like a guy on the East Coast wants he has his engine overhauled back there, but he wants the case O-ring. They'll ship the case out to us. Well, they'll ship it to Divco or somebody to have it overhauled first, and then forward it on to us. We'll cut the O-ring groove in it, pack it all back up and forward it back to the shop where they can put it together.
Right. Interesting. So next question. I'm sure we've got 18 people here that are all going to ask a similar question. So I happen to have a IO 540 K1 G5, as does at least one other guy in this. Actually, 2 other guys on the call with Mike Pattison, and my engine is at almost at 1750. I know my buddy Tim has like 2,500 on his. What would you tell us at that stage? As far as I know, my cylinders bore scope wonderfully at this time. The compressions are all good. But is it? Is one path to continue would be to just do all the cylinders and keep running it with that much time on it, or does that make sense?
Your call. The way I see it, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I talk to old guys every day. Ancient dudes, and I'm trying to get out of them how much time's on the engine, and they're telling me, this thing's got 4,300 hours on it, and still running like a sewing machine. So I know guys are going way over TBO.
Right.
That's just some book number, and that's probably, gets Lycoming or Continental out of the liability if they put some low time on it.
Right.
Most engines aren't ever going to make it that far. I walk through teardown every day, and, most engines just aren't going to make it there because you guys don't take care of them. The average dude, like say back where you're at, in the upper Midwest, it's snowy, it's wintertime there right now, and you're probably not flying. So like, a guy goes out in the spring, he's all, jonesing to go fly. So he changes the oil in the filter, does a little bit of maintenance, right? And goes out and flies it all summer. Puts a few hours on it, and the engine's ran enough. The oil has corrosive acids and stuff in it, right? The oil's not good oil anymore, right?
Right.
Well, then the snow starts falling. You go, hell, man, I can't fly anymore. I'm just going to back this thing up in the barn and forget about it all winter, right? But you don't change the oil. You just let it sit there. You've got moisture, you've got corrosive acids and things in the oil, and it just sits all winter, in a cold, moist environment. Oil and filters are cheap. Change the oil before you park it for the winter. You know what I mean? Have it sit there all winter on
Sure.
good, clean oil with a new filter.
Yeah.
We tear the engines apart all the time. You guys talk in terms of cylinders. I see them when they tear them apart out here, and I have to write up the teardown reports and send them back to you guys once we get them inspected. What we're throwing away on the inside is all the gears and the accessory housing. There's a certain amount of pitting that can be polished out of the gear teeth, but if it pits and it goes too deep, those things get chucked, and some of those gears are $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 a piece. When you have to start replacing the whole accessory section, a cam, a crank maybe,
Right.
because of rust and corrosion and stuff, that gets seriously expensive. And that's why most engines don't make it a TBO.
Yeah. Another question for you in that regard. I know changing oil is cheap, and we do that here. I do it every 3 months, whether it needs it or not. And even though my airplane's in a heated, insulated hangar, um, but what I was wondering was if oh, lost my train of thought. There was recently an article in AOPA that Mike Bush wrote about how Lycoming valves are more likely to stick than Continental, although at a much lower rate than Continental valves fail. But is there anything you guys like? Do you see any mode of failure in exhaust valves in Lycomings that if people just did something different that could be avoided?
I think if the cylinder's set up right, if the guides are honed and reamed, and everything's put together right, you're probably not going to have that sticking problem. The sticking's more a new valve and a new guide, and there you go. Just right from the factory kind of a deal. I think that's where you see the sticking.
Okay, because Lycoming talks about leaning aggressively on the ground and don't, try not to let big, exhaust debris build up in the guide type of thing. But
yeah, for sure. But when you're running the motor, gas is kind of cheap, so always sort of run it on the rich side, because gas is a lot cheaper than cylinders. When you start burning valves and guides and stuff up and burning up pistons, that starts getting into your checkbook really quick. And gas is a heck of a lot cheaper, so keep those pistons cool. Keep the cylinder temp down.
do you have a CHT recommendation for, I talked to the guys in the Lycoming booth at Oshkosh, right? And they're like, we don't start worrying until, 450 degrees, or we doesn't matter if it's below 450. And I was like, that sounds ridiculous.
That's their number. That's their number, 450. Probably keep it down closer to 400. I don't know what the exact numbers are. I'd have to ask, but I know that 580 we sent to the Czech Republic. They were monitoring all 6 cylinders, but they weren't monitoring it. Everything was there, but nobody was watching. And they actually burned up 6 cylinders on this thing, brand new engine. And their numbers, the numbers were ungodly. They were like 750 degrees or something. We ended up air freighting the engine back and going through it for them. But, they'll probably run a lot hotter than 450 and still be okay.
Do you have any comments on, I always think of the weakness with Lycoming engines is the valve train, like the cam and the lifters and stuff. And do you have any comments on cam guard for particularly higher time engines like the one I'm running?
Bush isn't in on this thing, is he?
No, absolutely not.
He's not one of you guys? Okay, well,
No,
here's my deal from being here for 20 years. It's probably a great product down the road when the engines get some time on them, to make cam lobes last a little bit longer. It's just a slick 50 STP kind of a product, right?
Right.
But remember that coming out of here, they're new engines. The cylinders have been honed. They're new rings. We've test run it. We'll tell you we're going to run an engine for at least an hour and a half. That doesn't mean we're going to start it at noon and turn it off at 1:30. It'll take our guys 2 or 3 days to put that time on it. And a lot of times I'm doing the logbooks, we got 4 or 5.9 or 6.3 hours on it, right? Because we're going to run the engine. The first thing our guys in the test cell are looking for is that the rings seat in and the cylinders dry up. They'll run it for a while. They'll let it cool off. And they'll take the plugs out and borescope it and make sure it's drying out. But they're also dialing in the oil pressure, fuel pressure, ignition system, all that. Once they have at least an hour and a half on it, the cylinders are dry, and they feel pretty good about everything. Well, they get the owner of the company, and he'll go out and test run every motor before it goes out of here, right? I mean, I've been here 20 years, and he's test ran every one of them. You know, if we do 300 engines a year, he's sitting in test cell 300 times a year, you know, to make sure everything's right before it goes out of here. We want it to be the best engine that it can be. But what we'll do is we'll do an engine, and we'll ship it out to you guys. And initially, you'll call us and go, hey, man, I love this thing. You know, it's making all this horsepower and blah, 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 and just, you know, tickle pink, right? And then a month or two or three or four later, you start calling going, hey, you know, my compression's really going down, and I'm starting to burn a lot of oil. So the first thing I'll ask on the phone is, did you put anything in the oil, right? Oh, no, I'm just, you know, I'm still running on mineral oil, or I just switched it over or whatever, right? Did you put anything in the oil? No. And then, you know, I mean, after 30 minutes of bullshitting with the guy, I finally get oh, well, you know, this neighbor mate of mine, you know, this guy, hangar mate, you know, down the way a little bit, he told me to put cam guard in there. New rings and new cylinders don't seem to like cam guard at all. So the fix over the phone is, I'll tell you guys, if you don't mind doing it, drain the oil, you know, put it back on mineral, and throw, for a small engine, a 4-cylinder, throw 1 pint of valve blend in there. For you guys with the 6 cylinders, throw 2 cans of valve blend in there. Then go out and run the hell out of it for a couple hours, and then check your compression again. Most guys that will call back will tell us that the compression's back up and the oil burns, you know, consumption stabilized. So I'm not knocking Mike's product, but it just doesn't seem to go with new cylinders and new barrels. So you guys with newer engines or newer cylinders, don't run this stuff. The higher time guys, maybe, yeah. But back to the lifter cam thing with Lycomings, you know, the problem with Lycoming is the cam and the lifters are at the top of the engine. So if it sits, that's the first thing that goes dry. It wasn't that the cams had a problem. It was the lifters, the old steel cam followers. Right. They were made out of steel and then rust and then pit. And when that pitting got deep enough, it turned into like 40 grit sandpaper. When you guys cranked it over, it just started eating up the cam lobes.
Yeah.
About 15 years ago, Lycoming came up with this stuff called DLC coating, or diamond black carbon. If you've ever seen it, it just looks like black chrome or black glass that's like sprayed on the cam follower, the nail head part of the lifter that actually touches the cam.
I've used them. Yep.
Once they put that stuff in there, that has been the fix for cams and lifters for Lycoming. Yep. We became impressed enough with it. Experimentally, we'll send our Continental lifters out and have that stuff we found a place on the East Coast that'll put it on for us. We send our experimental Continental lifters out and have those coated with that stuff. We coat our piston pins and rocker shafts to save wear and heat. So that really has been the fix. So any of you guys I doubt any of you guys have an old enough Lycoming engine that has steel lifters in it anymore. But if it does get overhauled, or, you know, prop strike inspection or IRAN inspection, have them switch it out to the DLC lifters, and there goes your cam problems. You'll really never have it again.
Interesting. Yeah, I've used the carbide face lifters on a 0470 Continental, and it was a great. I think sounds exactly like what you're talking about. It's a great solution for sure.
Water can't permeate it, so it can't rust, and it seems to. It seems like oil wants to stick to it. You know, it seems to hold oil somehow. So you just, you know, when you turn it over, even if after it's been sitting for a while, you just don't have that cam lifter problem anymore.
There's a question in the chat that John Effinger asked about, can you elaborate on drying out of cylinders? I think at break-in is what he's referring to.
Yeah, just during the break-in process, we're test running it, and I mean, we used the term drying. You know, the ring barrel interface, I mean, oil's going to get past the ring, so the cylinder's going to be wet. You know, when you first start up an engine,
right?
You know, it's going to be pumping oil for a while until the rings really start to heat in. You know, just with heat and time. You know, start and stop, heat it up, cool it off, kind of a deal. Eventually, the rings are going to seed into the cylinders, and then oil really can't get past them anymore, or very little of it.
Okay. Does that answer your question, John? Oh, I don't know if he's on audio or not.
With us in test running here, we can do that. You know, if we just do a set of cylinders for you, we're not test running. You know, we don't start the cylinders up, so that's up to you guys.
Yeah.
But same deal. You know, just put it on mineral oil and just run the hell out of it for a couple hours. Follow the Lycoming or Continental break-in service bulletin, and you shouldn't have any problems. And all that really says is, you know, I mean, you're not going to take a 2-hour cross country crossing your fingers with new cylinders. You know, you're going to stay somewhere around the airport just doing big circles. But what they really don't want you doing is long off the throttle descents or touch and goes or anything like that.
Sure.
You know, just get it up and run it real hard for a couple of hours, and the rings should seat in, and you should be golden after that.
Chris, do you have an opinion on Superior versus Lycoming factory cylinders as far as build quality
Cylinders.
and longevity? Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, up to COVID, I would always say that we preferred Lycoming cylinders. I mean, we're a distributor, but we don't get a kickback or anything. And same with Continental. We prefer Continental cylinders. It just seems like the factory cylinders. We love talking with you guys, but we don't really like you guys calling in bitching at us about something, so we just have better luck with the factory jugs. But we've always used, ECI when they were available, and even Superior, and we use a lot of Superior now. This last, I guess going back a little over a year, we started getting calls from guys on the phone, and they were sending us borescope pictures of their Superior cylinders. And the borescope pictures, it just looked like corrugated barn tin, or corrugated siding or something. I just thought of barn tin, when I would see the pictures. It was just this wavy barrel material, right?
Yeah, I've seen those pictures.
We weren't really sure what was going on, and none of them were our cylinders. We had really no idea. We weren't really experiencing that with our engines. Nobody was calling us, telling us that. And we did a set of jugs for a guy in England. We did them. We set them up for him and everything. We shipped them to him. He ran the engine like 30 hours and had that problem. So we had him fire those things back to us. We did another set. We came up with a kind of an idea of what we thought was going on. We we fixed a set of brand new cylinders for him, ported them and did all that bit, sent him back to him, got him on his way. So he's good. And then we took those cylinders and we sent them to an engineering firm, to have them analyzed to an analysis place to determine what was wrong. And the thoughts were that the cross hatching wasn't deep enough on the factory cylinders. So they're not holding any oil there in the cross hatching. So, they get installed, the guy leans it out, runs it real hard, it starts getting hot. There's no oil between the rings and the barrel. And that's when the rings start just dragging on the metal, and they start kind of hopping and skipping and making that kind of corrugated. I've talked to a couple of guys that were up at Oshkosh, and they stood in line at Superior. And the Superior guys told them the fix for the time anyway was they were shipping their new cylinders with Lycoming rings in them. That was the fix at the time. And it seems like that problem's gone away. We're not getting the calls so much anymore for it.
Interesting.
But, but as far as Lycoming Superior, they're both good. You dudes that have been around for a while, you remember the ADs on Superior and ECI cylinders about, 18 years ago or so? Mm-hmm. When all the airworthiness directives started coming out on them, and you still see them on your engines today, that we still have to comply with all that. I'm absolutely sure in 5 years we're going to have them on Lycoming and Superior cylinders. The Lycomings, because they're just starting to manufacture them, and who knows what's not right in those. And the Superior, because they were making cylinders with one shift a week. And then when Lycoming went down and couldn't make them, all of a sudden they had to add another shift and a third shift and a fourth shift to keep going 7 days a week, right? Superior was supplying a hell of a lot of cylinders like they hadn't, 6 months or a year before. So I don't doubt that there's going to be ADs on both of those manufacturers in the next few years.
So if I'm going to do a major overhaul on my engine in relatively near future, then I'm thinking it makes more sense rather than to have new Lycoming cylinders coming off this new production line that who knows what they're going to be. Maybe to have you guys overhaul the existing cylinders, which were new with the engine, and then just do the bottom end and, as a major overhaul.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
That's always a good way to go because, any cylinders, brand new cylinders, you can run them 200 hours and they could crack. But you could find a set of cylinders that ran 2 lifetimes and they're not cracked. So all that means is that whatever foundry they came out of or the process with which they were made at the time, they were made good, or the material or something, the quality control in it. We see that a lot. We'll see cylinders that have had, a lifetime or 2 lifetimes on them. And we blast them clean, go through, do all the inspections of the NDTs, and the cylinders aren't cracked. They're good jugs. We might be boring them out P10 or P15, but they go out and they run another lifetime again or close to it, depending on how the guy operates it. But you could take a brand new cylinder and break the thing in no time.
So you're saying that an old cylinder, who knows, 20 years old, couple 3,000 hours on it, you're not concerned about thermal cycling or its life cycle performance when you go oversize a bit and just let it run another whole TBO run?
Yeah, if it can make it that far. If it hasn't cracked in that much time, it's not going to.
Interesting.
Think of the abuse that thing's went through in 2,000 hours or 2,500 hours, right? It's been ran to hell and back, right? And it's not broken.
Interesting.
Maybe the barrel's pitted or a little scratched up or something. You bore it or plate it and bring it back to standard. And chances are that thing's going to keep on going.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because to overhaul a cylinder, an overhauled cylinder, the only thing you're going to get back is the head and the barrel, possibly the intake guides, but everything else gets replaced. All the small moving parts are all replaced.
Right.
You know, the guides, the exhaust valves, the springs, all the keeper hardware, pistons, rings, all the little fittings on it, exhaust studs. I mean, that's all replaced. So only the head and barrel are original.
So you're not concerned about somebody having overheated it, got it up to 450 or 60 or whatever. I guess if it didn't crack at that point, it's not going to crack, right?
No. And we're going to see that anyway. I mean, if it comes through here, it's going to look burned up. All the paint's going to be burned off. It's going to be seriously white or black or something. You know what I mean?
Right. Interesting. Man, this is a lot to take in at one time. I'm out of questions. I'm wondering if anybody else has any other questions. Here's one.
Hey,
Can you
okay,
see, and if you can see the chat or not? Oh, we got a couple of them coming in now. If the port piles process will give you XX horsepower on a normally aspirated motor, what will the same process result in for a turbocharged 540?
It'll help on the turbos also. I mean, it's just a big air pump. We're trying to balance the airflow through the thing. I mean, we port all of our turbocharged engines also. If we do, like I say, if we do 300 engines here a year, and I'm not counting the cylinders that we do that just get shipped in, if we do exactly 300 engines a year, 275 of those probably are going to have ported cylinders. The only ones that won't do it, some of the law enforcement agencies, government type stuff, a lot of the flight schools won't do it because they don't even want the capability to make more horsepower for their students. But most everybody else is going to do it. You know, 9 out of 10 are going to have it done.
So the same efficiencies would apply to a turbocharged engine, is what you're saying.
Yep.
So another question here is, one of our guys was told porting and polishing had a couple disadvantages as well. That is, the polishing benefits would fade quickly over time as normal buildups on the ports would nullify the advantages of the surfaces would get rough again from garbage that it picks up from running. Also, by porting the cylinders, they would be more prone to cracking. Is there any data which would support either of these claims?
No, because we don't, like I already said, we don't make the holes any bigger, the passages, so we remove very little material from them. You know, we're not thinning out those exhaust port walls because that's where they're going to crack, right? We already know that's a problem, and we're not making that any thinner. We're doing the work deep inside of the head in the transition area where the air goes into and out of the combustion chamber, not in that exhaust port wall where you're thinking.
Okay, so there would be no buildup of
Well, carbon would start to build up there. What we did was probably the first, 20 years of our existence, the porting was all done by hand, right? We didn't have a CNC. It was always done by the same guy. There's really no turnover here. Like the guy that overhauls our connecting rods in-house, he's been overhauling our rods for like 30 years. We had our chief inspector had been here like 32 years. He just passed away, not this last Thanksgiving, but the Thanksgiving before. We had a guy that was like 79 years old. He was an engine builder. He passed away. A guy in our accessory department was like 70-something years old. And he passed away, right? There's really no turnover. We're kind of like the mafia. You have to die to get out of here.
So what you're saying is that exhaust debris wouldn't build up in the
Well, hang on. The porting was always done by hand, just with die grinder, right? But it was the same guy that did it, and he had his little molds for each cylinder, and little pieces of wood or whatever he'd fit in there, and make it fit, right? And then we got our CNC in 2006, right after I started here, and we were porting our cylinders. We were doing cylinders for Red Bull back then. We did either did all the engines or big chunks of the engines for 13 of the 15 teams that were running the first time for Red Bull. When we started porting our cylinders with the CNC, we knew how much horsepower we knew what our 540s would do in the test cell. And we got our first ones out there and they were making more horsepower. And we're going, holy shit, what's going on? What did we do wrong? We screwed something up because we're making more horsepower. We had to get some engineering guys involved in it, and they said that when the CNC is trying to go around that corner back there, it's leaving these little tool marks in there like the dimples in a golf ball, right? And it makes the air swirl into and out of the combustion chamber. So we make more horsepower that way.
And
but one of the problems on the exhaust side was those little divots, because the combustion chamber is always belching carbon. It would start to stick in those little dimples, right? Eventually, over time, it's probably going to choke down, but it's going to take a lot of time to do it. But in the meantime, we decided way back then that we'd go ahead and throw them back over in this building, and we have a guy back there 10 hours a day with a die grinder just smoothing out those tool marks. So it's almost, the polishing part of that port polish and flow balance or whatever. We're cleaning out those tool marks. So on the exhaust side, especially, we don't have carbon sticking there.
Interesting. You're saying it's polished enough that that surface is not really able to be adhered to.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's going to stick, but again, we get to see our stuff a lot of times in, name it a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? Because we'll do an engine for you, and you'll run the hell out of it for a while, and you'll sell it to your neighbor. Well, he's not familiar with the airframe, and he has a prop strike, and he goes, well, the engine came from Lycon. I'm just going to send it back to them and let them go through it, right? So we get to tear our stuff apart all the time. And it's not like we're having to blast, 2 pounds of carbon out of the exhaust ports on these things. I mean, whether they're stock or ported or whatever, they don't choke down that bad.
Okay.
I mean, guys that are running real hot and lean will see a lot of erosion in there where it starts eroding the exhaust port wall just from the heat, but carbon's not really a big issue there.
Okay. I was going to say, it seems to me when you drop the exhaust, you could go up there with a toothbrush or something and clean that crap out if you were that concerned about it.
Yeah, you always could. But another part of porting is we're bringing like say your CHT spreads across your 6 cylinders on the 540s if you guys all have those. Porting will actually kind of bring those spreads down closer. You know what I mean? It'll kind of tighten up that gap, because all your cylinders are going to kind of run at different temperatures, right? Once we run them through the porting process, it generally helps with that. And
yeah. The other question Russ had was that when you go oversize on a barrel, is it any more prone to cracking because you went oversized with it or no?
No, barrels really don't crack anyway. Where we see the cracks is exhaust ports,
yep.
Where it gets real hot, the thermal cycling and spark plug bosses. It's rare that, I've been here 20 years. I've never seen a broken barrel.
Okay.
There have been a couple of cases with like those ECI ones, that Acme thread that screws into the head. That would start to crack and leak there, but that was a manufacturing defect back then anyway. But right. I've never seen a broken barrel other than, some hard landing and actually busted the cylinder.
Yeah, no. I happened to just be reading an article today where somebody put thermocouples on the exhaust like guide area, and I guess the exhaust guide can get, if you run at peak, can go over 450 pretty fast. So this is why it's important not to pay attention to leaning. But anyway.
Yeah, a lot of, if you guys are looking at that magazine article, you'll see some cylinder pictures. I'm not looking at the article, but there's pictures. I think it shows like a factory cylinder, like how many cylinders, it's like that blue-gray color, right? And then you'll see some that have a gold head and a black barrel. What we'll do is we'll blast the paint, that factory paint, off of a cylinder, and we'll paint the barrels black if you don't tell us otherwise. Just, it's just a neat color, but we'll only iodine the head, and we'll run about 12 or 15 degrees cooler that way up on the top end.
Right.
Just allowing the heat to escape through that aluminum into the cooling air faster. And then, like I was talking about the DLC coating on rocker shafts and piston pins, it'll reduce friction and wear, but it reduces heat also. So we're doing everything we can to keep the heat out of the cylinders. The cooler we can make them run, the longer we can make them last.
Sure. Anybody else have any other questions for Chris?
And again, any of you guys out here, if you guys ever get near Central California, stop in.
Hey, yeah, Scott.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Scott. Hey, it's Mike Pattison. Can you see me now? I turned the camera.
Stand by a minute. Not really. No, I'm not seeing you, but
okay. Well, yeah, I guess as long as you guys can hear me, I guess that's all that matters.
Oh, I can see your hand now. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right. I wanted to tell. So I wonder if people are wondering, like, the part and polish, the performance difference. It was really hard for me to tell. Well, I'll tell you this. My airplane had kind of it because there was so much corrosion in the cylinders. I mean, it was holding compression, and the airplane was running, but it was just consuming probably about 1 quart every maybe 6 or 7 hours, maybe 5 hours, somewhere in there. But when I got and I was actually working with John Effinger on this. I don't know if he remembers me or not, but I have the slow 182 in Southern California regarding rigging. This was one reason I did the whole overhaul and the port and polish of the cylinders, because I wanted the airplane to go fast. Because if I'm going to have a 300 horsepower engine, I want the airplane to go as fast as I possibly can. So, when I did before the port and polish, the fastest I would ever see out of the airplane was like 151 true. That was at 7,000 feet, wide open, rich at peak, and around 16 and a half gallons per hour. Since I got the port and polish and the cylinders overhauled, the fastest I've seen is 162. So it's gained 11 knots. I still think the airframe is slow. I think the drag is in the tail, but in any case, it definitely woke the engine up. It kicks ass now. I was also that guy who broke the cylinders in as prescribed per Lycoming. And then I called Chris and said, dude, this thing is still consuming oil. It's not what I want. I want it near, 20 hours per quart. I want it super, super tight, especially considering how much money I spent on it. And he asked me that, what kind of oil are you running? And are you running CamGuard? And I said, yeah, I am running CamGuard. I said, get rid of it, go back to mineral, put 2 of those pints of Avblend in, and I have. And sure enough, exactly what he said has happened. So now I'm burning probably like 1 quart every 12 to 15. I fly my airplane as hard as I possibly can. I'm wide open throttle from takeoff till about maybe 3,000 feet AGL, and I run my prop anywhere out of 500. I bring the prop back to 24, maybe 23, kind of depends on how I'm flying it. But yeah, so what Chris said exactly works. So if you guys have any, I know you guys, I mean, CamGuard seems to be the hot thing now, but I think like Chris said, it definitely has a time and a place. And I think Chris even mentioned it like galls the cylinder, kind of puts a coat on the cylinder.
Well,
And
yeah, seems to glaze the barrel wall or the
yeah,
ring.
right.
And that's only on newer engines. I mean, a high time engine is probably a great product, but when you have a brand new set of cylinders, just keep that stuff out of it for a while.
Right, right. That rolling into that, I do have one question. So I'm based in Cable, which is inland Southern California. Chris, you probably know where that's at. But I
Mhm.
go from Cable to Long Beach usually once a day to pick up parts or do whatever I got to do. Um, I've never read anything about not doing this or it's prohibited or frowned upon. Do you see any problem with operating an airplane, an engine IO 540 above 75% in cruise for power?
No, I mean
Okay.
it's not telling you anything, is it? I mean, it's running good when you're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I keep it on the cool side, and I'm a fan of Richard Peak. I'm not a fan of Lena Peak. I just operate my airplane Richard Peak, generally speaking, and
Yeah.
What are your
so
CHTs, Mike? What are your CHTs at those power settings?
I always lean Richard Peak not to exceed 380.
Okay, so you don't reach 400. That's good.
Mm-hmm. No,
Cool. That's
but
Yeah, as long as you got gas going through there and the cylinders are cool, I mean, you shouldn't have any problem at all.
okay,
John
cool.
Effinger has another question in the chat here, and he says, any reasoning why Lycoming compressions hold up and TCM don't hold high compression readings after time? We typically see Lycomings in the upper 70s and TCMs in the 60s,
Yeah,
within
I
two,
don't know
three.
why the Continentals go down, but we've actually ran them in testing with no rings just to see if they'll run, and they do.
Hmm.
I mean, we've run Continental engines in our test cell with no rings just for kicks, just to see if they'll start and run, and they do. I mean, they'll run. They don't run great, but
Hmm.
I don't know why the compression's always down on Continentals. Just right off the bat, they go to hell. I mean, if I talk to a Lycoming guy and his compression's 70, he's worried to death. But we talk to guys all the time with Continental engines. If they've got 40 pounds or 50 pounds, I mean, they're just stoked.
Yeah, it is interesting how the two vary like that. I wonder, you see all that article recently about 9,000 valves where they're tracking the big data for these valve performance and about I guess it's much more likely to have a burned Continental exhaust valve than a burned Lycoming exhaust valve, and not really sure if that has anything to do with it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right, well, I guess if there's no other questions, I guess we can let Chris go. Chris, I would
Good.
love to
Dinner
come
time.
out.
I'm ready to go eat.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for staying over, man. Appreciate it. And you know what? If and when I come out there to hang with Mike, whatever, I definitely gonna schedule time to stop by.
Yeah, stop in any time. I mean, if you guys fly in, just fly into Visalia, and I'll pick you up there. if you're in your own plane. Closest commercial is probably Fresno, and you'd have to rent a car and drive down. That's about less than an hour drive. Or you can drive in any time. I mean, we're generally here on Saturdays. If you're coming through, it's on a Sunday or something, and that's the only day you can get here, just let me know, and I'll drive over and open up and show you around the place.
Cool. It's you guys definitely are doing things that we don't see other people doing, and I know somebody with a Comanche whose engine you did a couple years ago, and he's having similar, like he's like 10 or 15 knots faster than he was as well, and thrilled with your work. So, all right, well,
yeah, Scott, I'll when I get in the morning, I'll dig up a bunch of magazine article information stuff and email it to you.
appreciate
I'll have
it.
to go searching through the servers to try to find it, but then you can share it with all those guys.
Great. We got a spot on our site just for your information. So please, we got this one article up. It'd be great to have more.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. I'm going to
all right. Thanks, guys.
Let you go. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Have fun.
See ya.
Bye.
I'm gonna pause the recording.